Hi guys and welcome to my review of the Huawei P8. It is Huawei's normal sized flagship for 2015 and I really had to wait a long time to finally get my hands on it. So was it worth the wait? We'll see in my full review. Let's start off with the design and build quality and a quick size comparison against the Sony Xperia Z3 first. It is a little bit shorter, it is also a fraction of a millimeter maybe narrower, and it is also a little bit thinner, but it feels very identical, almost the same. But when it comes to the design and build quality of a device, lately what became the most important thing for me is the feel in hand. And what about that here? It is very well crafted aluminum unibody, as you can already see here, with 144 grams, though it almost feels a little bit too lightweight for me personally. I would wish for a little bit more heft to give it a little bit more of a substantial super premium status. Also on the top here and on the bottom we can see those beveled edges that make it feel a little bit more edgy in the hand. I would personally prefer something a little bit more round to have a more organic feel in the hand. Also on the back and on the sides we have very smooth aluminum that makes it feel a little bit slippery from time to time. The good thing though is with 71.8 millimeters and 6.4 millimeters is this very compact, so still very easy to hold it securely, but I would definitely wish for a little bit more grip. The rest otherwise is nice. The button placement is pretty much close to perfection because this is the perfect ideal spot for me. You also have double tap to wake. That didn't work super reliable for me, like maybe 60%, as you can see. Sometimes it just didn't work out, but the button is pretty nice. Also, they stick out a little bit more than usually. At least it seemed for me that way. They are very clicky, very tactile, so the buttons could be any better. This is the way I want buttons to be. Also on the sides we can see here the SIM card and SD card tray, very nifty, implemented into the device itself, very elegant. Otherwise in terms of ports we have the headphone jack and the microphone at the top. On the side there is nothing. At the bottom we have the two speaker cutouts, micro USB, but don't get your hopes up, only one is the speaker, this one here, I guess here is another microphone. And at the back we can see the OIS 13 megapixel camera with the dual tone flash. So to sum it up, it is maybe not my most favorite design because I would prefer something more round and organic, but I can't say anything bad about the design. It is more of a personal preference thing, I guess, in the end. But just in terms of design and build, it is done pretty much flawless and it just looks beautiful in my opinion. If you think a 1080p display on 5.2 inches isn't flagship material anymore in 2015, think again. Because it's not just about the sheer number of pixels but the actual quality of this display, and here this one knows to impress. We have very satisfying maximum brightness, and in sunlight you also get some kind of contrast boost where all the bright elements get boosted. Maybe not as accurate and natural anymore, but therefore the sunlight buildability was really good. The default white level was a bit too warm for me. I set mine all the way down to cold, but the great thing is we have color temperature control, something that I think shouldn't be a feature anymore but a standard these days, because it makes it able for you to adjust it just the way you want the colors to be, at least in terms of the white itself. In terms of the blacks, they are as deep as an IPS panel can get, almost no shift when moving it to the side, but only visible on angles you won't ever use anyway, so I'm absolutely happy. Almost on an AMOLED level. There are no color presets here, but therefore the colors are already spot on. They pop, they are nicely saturated, not oversaturated, staying natural and accurate all the time, and they are also never dull or washed out. The viewing angles are fantastic as well, maybe not so much visible here on the video. In reality they are way more solid, and you only have a typical loss of brightness, which is even less here noticeable than on other devices. Also, the responsiveness of this display is very great. All my side bezel gestures got accepted without any issues, which is something really important for me. So in overall, I would say it is maybe the second best display after the S6, because the S6 just knows to impress a little bit more. But when it comes to an actual accurate and natural picture, I would even give the P8 the win. One thing I can definitely say, it is the most impressive 1080p display I've reviewed so far. Let's see what the speakers can do and check the sound first. So as you can see, when I have them in landscape, like I usually cup them here, we have a very rich and full sound and also very loud, no problems here. Also a hint of bass, fairly balanced mids, but at high volumes the highs can be a little bit harsh. The maximum volume is impressive, no desires left here for anything more, but what I noticed, I tended to set the volume a little bit lower for a still loud enough but therefore better sound experience. But all of these great attributes are actually gone, as you noticed, once I hold it more typically in portrait mode, because a lot less loud, also less rich, still okay though, no problem. But when I hold it like this, you noticed I block the speaker quite easily. One thing that I noticed what works if I turn it the other way around, then the speaker is at the top. I didn't block it as much anymore, but therefore, as you can see here, I hit the volume rockers. So I would still think this is the way to go if you play. Just be a little bit careful how you hold your hand, but still the sound is very nice, very loud, sounds quite good. Yeah, the speaker position is the one thing that could be better. It's still better than being on the back, but you have to work out a little bit so how you hold it in your hand. Time to talk about the performance, and just so you can see, no apps loaded yet, so what you see is what you get. So let's jump into the browser and see what we've got here. In the browser, as you can see, loading times are quite fast. Also the scrolling, buttery smooth, no complaints here at all, very nice. Chrome behaved pretty much the same way. If we now open an app like Phoenix, you will see also very smooth. There is some occasional lag here and there, but the easiest way and maybe the quickest way to describe this performance would be calling it a Snapdragon 801 plus minus 5%. Very similar performance. And let's check another app, for example here a Feedly reader. It will have to reload, as you can see. Very smooth and nice. A little bit of rare lags are noticeable. That is maybe a little bit of software optimization that could improve things, but other than that, I was absolutely happy with this performance, no problems here at all. G Plus was a little bit more laggy than, for example, my Sony Xperia Z3, but still satisfying throughout the whole thing, no problems here. Multitasking is something that I don't like so much, because as you can see, I only see 4 apps at a time. I can scroll to the sides, but this is just not convenient to use. I also noticed in terms of multitasking performance, it seems to kill off apps a little bit earlier than maybe the Sony Xperia Z3, but it does a better job than some other devices, like for example the S6, so it is still on a good side here. As for the gaming performance, this is where I'm not so happy, and here the Snapdragon 801 definitely was a lot better, because the frame rates just weren't quite there where I wanted it to be. It was not that it was laggy or so, but it just didn't provide so many average frames per second, and this is something you should see here in the game as well. So if you are a heavy gamer, maybe you should go for a Snapdragon after all, because as you can see here, it is playable at all times, don't get me wrong, it is still fine, and it is still mostly smooth, but it just doesn't deliver so many frames per second that the best devices. And I already noticed this, for example, in Real Racing 3, where when you have a lot of cars on the screen, it just gets into a little bit trouble. If you are alone on the track, things are mostly fine. As you can see, it still performs very great. But it was the gaming where the difference between the Snapdragon 801, for example, was still the biggest. And if you might think the 801 isn't an actual recent software or CPU anymore, don't worry, because I also reviewed the Snapdragon 805 and 810, and the 801 still performs on the same flagship level, so don't worry about it. The performance here on this device is absolutely well. It maybe with a little bit better software optimization could still be better, but it is still, and I would still call it in 2015, a flagship level performance. Let's talk about something very important where a lot of devices knew to disappoint this year, and that is the battery life. First of all, the charging times: after half an hour you are at 25%, 1 hour 35%, and after 2.5 hours you are fully charged, and this makes it quite obvious we don't have any sort of quick charge. I also here for the battery life did a Geekbench 3 benchmark. As you can see, almost 5 hours is where I landed, which seems quite realistic if you don't consider any standby drain, which is a little bit of an issue because a lot of times the Android system just hung up and then the standby drain was quite high and made it harder to get a good battery life. On normal Wi-Fi only use, I got about 4.5, maybe close to 5 hours of use. In normal mixed use though, with mobile data as well, I ended up every time very close to 4 hours, and this is where I would see the device getting end up. I was always using the device with 35% of brightness, which is more than enough for me. And I would say expect about solid 4 hours of screen on time, maybe a little bit more. Of course, this always depends on your use, but I would say the battery life itself isn't impressive, but it is also not really disappointing after all, so I'm quite okay with it. This is already good enough, for at least for most people, I think. Let's get into the software and I will show you only the most important things, because going through all of that would just take too much time. So let's just start with the lock screen. Here we have it. There is not much going on here. You can direct access the camera, not much else there, no direct app access or so. If you swipe up, you get media controls, you can change the covers and so on. You get direct access to the recorder, calculator, flashlight and camera, which is quite nice, especially the flashlight is something useful. What are the covers? Every time you turn on the display, you will see a different wallpaper. Quite a nice feature, but nothing really outstanding. As for the launcher itself, there is no app drawer, which is a big bummer for me and already reason enough for me to switch for something like Nova or so. But if you want it, it works. If you check the notification shade, we have a kind of timeline that shows you all the notifications. I don't really see the necessity of the timeline itself, but why not? It's not a really big problem. Here would have a clear all button if we would have any notifications. And one thing that I noticed that isn't available anymore is the quick pull down. On the Ascend Mate 7 I could just swipe on the right side to get quick access to my shortcuts. Now I will have to swipe to the side. Here we have the quick settings. They can be rearranged in the edit menu, but they can't really be deleted if you want to maybe just have 6 or so. So that's a little bit of a limitation, but still works. In the settings itself, we have a general tab for the more common one used options, but if you want all, just go into all. And for the smart assistance options, the first one we have here is voice wake up, and let's just see if that actually works. Okay, Amy, where are you? It seems to have worked, as you can see here. This is supposed to be helpful if you don't find your phone and want to just shout for it. I'm not so sure if that's really useful if you are maybe too far away from it, but hey, it's there. It's free to use or not. Other than that, you get motion control options, as you can see here, pick up, raise to ear, double tap to wake the screen, which worked halfway decent at least. For the navigation bar, limited options, you can open here, as you can see, your notification panel, rearrange the buttons a little bit, but that's also it. The one-handed UI is quite something useful, maybe if you have smaller hands. The display almost gets too small, but at least it makes it really easy to use it with one hand only without any issues. And under more, we have a few more options, as you can see here. There is not that too much special things and nothing you haven't maybe seen on other devices already. So I have to say it. The software itself, as you maybe see here, is solid and works okay, but there are a few drawbacks that I just don't like so much, as for example here, the recent apps menu just didn't make so much sense for me. The design itself is a little bit too far off the stock Android path, and the settings are a little bit too cluttered, and the way you access the shortcuts and so on is a little bit outdated. So once again, not the biggest fan of it, even though it does all it has to. Last point on the agenda would be the camera. The selfie camera itself makes really nice photos. They look good, not amazing though. The sharpness was fine, colors as well, but it for some reason just didn't blow me away. Other than that, the main camera is very sharp with a little bit of a flaky exposure, but once you hit it right, it really looks good. We have very nice contrast and natural color reproduction. The autofocus though and shutter speeds are just okay and far from the best. OIS seems to work well, especially low light we got really satisfying outcomes, so no complaints here at all. Videos are smooth and sharp, the exposure was very flaky and drastic though. The autofocus for me for some reason didn't work, and it was also very abrupt and not really well done for video, just too hard and jumpy. To make it quick, the camera is really nice, but especially in 2015 we got so much better cameras, for example in the S6 and also the G4. It is by no means a bad camera and actually a really good one, but it just can't keep up with the very best ones anymore. Time for the recap. In terms of design and build quality, not much they could have done any better. It feels very substantial, very premium and solid in the hand. It seems to withstand the time very nice, because this has been a review unit for a few months and it still looks absolutely new. It feels very compact in the hand, a little bit edgy, I would be for something more round, but other than that, really great. Amazing button placement, exactly the way I want it to be, double tap to wake and all that. So they did a really great job. But in terms of display, they did an even so much better job. The display is absolutely stunning, very bright, very sharp, great color calibration, color temperature control, which is nice to see, solid viewing angles. So I will say this once again, one of the best displays on the market. No problems comparing it with an QHD or anything else. It looks just amazing, also very natural and accurate, which is something I like personally. In terms of the sound, the speaker sounds very similar to something like the Samsung Galaxy S6, similar maximum volume, similar sound balance and so on. Only the button placement, or the speaker placement I mean, is a little bit less unfortunate because it seemed to be getting blocked easier than it was on the Samsung Galaxy 6, but it is still way more than just satisfying, did a fine job, so not really any complaints. It could have been done better, but not really that much either. In terms of the performance, absolutely happy, absolutely satisfied. Everything was very smooth. A little bit of stutters here and there, which you will see on pretty much every device anyways. Multitasking performance was also great as well. Only the gaming performance is where it didn't impress so much, but is still quite okay after all. In terms of the battery life, not the very best out there, but far from being one of the worst. And actually, if we see there's a 2015 flagship, even one of the more solid ones with at least solid consistent 4 hours of screen on time, and I see a lot of people getting more out of it anyways because I seem to drain my devices a little bit faster for some reason. In terms of the software, maybe not that super happy because the design looks a little bit odd. A few things like the recent apps menu and those things are not just my cup of tea, but other than that, it works solid. One thing that has to be mentioned, there is root available, but not really any other sort of XDA support because I found no custom ROMs or anything like that. And the support from Huawei side is also a little bit questionable. This device is still on Android 5.0, so I guess we will see an Android Marshmallow update, but when is the thing, because the Huawei SandMate 7 is still on KitKat and Lollipop should have arrived already in June. Now we have September and it's still not there. So that is the one thing to keep definitely in mind. Other than that, the camera, very satisfying, sharp pictures, really nicely done. Not much I could complain about. It did a great job. Not the very best out there because the competition is very strong, but is a very, very high level competitor other than that as well still. What about the competition here in this size range? And I want to try to make it quick, give you 3 competitors: the Sony Xperia Z3, the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the HTC One M9. Let's start off with that one. I see the P8 superior in terms of display, camera and battery life, and especially the more consistent, more reliable battery life and the better display would make it my first choice between those two. It is a little bit of the more mature device. In terms of the Samsung Galaxy S6, actually quite similar. They both feel very similar in the hand. Displays are both stunning. Sound is very similar. Performance is where I see this one a little bit more consistent. The S6 can get laggy from time to time, and also the multitasking just wasn't the best, but the gaming performance definitely is better. In terms of the camera, the S6 wins of course. Battery life, this one here is the winner. Software, I would even give the Samsung here the winner because this software is a little bit off. But just because of the better battery life and still overall great capabilities, I think I would still prefer this one. The last competitor would be the Sony Xperia Z3. Also very similar in terms of build and design, size. The display is better on the P8. The camera is a little bit better on the P8 as well. Sound is something that you have to choose. This one actually with front-facing stereo speakers should sound better, but it also distorts quite easily, where this one is a little bit louder, but with the less amazing sound. Performance very similar. I give the Sony the slight edge because it was a little bit more lightweight, a little bit smoother, a little less hiccups and so on. Software is a lot better here, more closer to stock feel. And this one just isn't the best anyways. So the battery life is where this one though wins very extremely. And that's why I would pick the Sony here, because it's for a reason my personal favorite device. Mostly because of the overall great qualities that this one has as well. But it is the amazing battery life where it just gets favored by me. But other than that, this is all I have to say. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Until next time, and if you have any comments, just leave them down below. Okay, bye.